Okay, let's begin. Okay, this mini lecture is going to look at some study skills for success. In particular, I'll focus on 5 methods that are proven to work. So let's jump right into it. Now, this mini lecture is particularly relevant for us as we're moving into the 4th week of our study together, which we'll be calling Module 2B. But the main thing is that on Thursday, we're going to have our first learning check, which is essentially like a unit test. So it'll be covering everything in Module 1 and Module 2. So I thought it's a good idea. It's a timely lecture to talk about skills that might help you to be successful. Okay, so method number 1, take notes and review them. We've already been working with this. We've learned our Cornell note-taking system, and this is why I've been asking you to take Cornell notes for some of the lectures, because theoretically, if your notes are well done, you should be ready for review. So Cornell Notes are a powerful tool. I also like to encourage students to start to build their skill with shorthands. Basically, shorthand notes are a way for you to take notes that makes things into your own system of abbreviations so that it can help you to speed up during the note-taking process and also during your review process. So I really encourage students to be regular with their review. You shouldn't be just trying to cram all the information right before the test. So that's why we say a nightly review is a good idea. Just go over everything that you've learned during your class one more time that day. So this helps you to crystallize your learning. And in particular, we want you to crystallize your learning through summary. And that's why the Cornell notes have that summary bar at the bottom. But also, you should be able to look at the title of the lecture, then close your notebook and kind of give yourself a quick summary of what the main learning was from that topic. Okay, so we also encourage you to incorporate buddies, study friends. So in this case, we're kind of isolated and we're all separated from each other, but there's no reason why you cannot get someone in your household to help you to review some of the concepts. Like one of the ideas we'll talk about are study cards. So that's really useful because if you make your own set of study cards, I recommend using you can get the little blank white cards that you call them recipe cards or whatever they're called. Put the question on the front, the answer on the back. We'll get to that. Okay, good. So method number 2 is the use of your community to help you with your studying. So as I was just mentioning, we are in isolation, but that doesn't mean that you can't create a support network around you. So the people who are within your isolation bubble, as we're calling it these days, can be used to help you, right? So get them to support you. They can help you review your study cards, and you can even reach out to me if you're struggling, and I'm willing to give you guidance as well. So I'll kind of help be a study buddy. Email me if you want to know more about that. So collaboration allows for discussion and growth, and we will actually be opening up some discussion boards soon on our VIU Learns page so that we can interact with each other as well and incorporate collaboration into the learning process. So traditionally, when we're in the classroom, each week one buddy will lead the review, and the reason for this is because teaching something is learning twice. So what you could also do is, if you have that helpful friend within your household, you could kind of try to reteach some of the concepts to them, and then being in that teacher role will help you to make sure you've got the information locked down. And then we're just going to support each other to fill in the gaps. So I'm going to be here for you with that regard. If you're wondering about any of the main concepts we've covered, you have any questions, this is a really good time to send an email to me with your questions. Okay, so number 3, our third method number 3, or M3, we want you to create flashcards for review. And again, I recommend those recipe size blank cards. Question goes on one side, answer goes on the back. So then each night you should use the study cards to help you crystallize your learning. And I even traditionally would say to my students, you should be making at least 5 to 7 study cards per class to help you with your review. So if you think about it, we've learned together for the last 3 weeks. We've already done 12 classes together, 12 days of learning together. So then you can easily do that. 5 times 12, you should have roughly around 60 cards in your study deck. So because we've got our first learning check coming up, this is a really good time to get on top of this and to start making your study cards. In another lecture for this week, I will kind of go over what some of those study cards might look like. Then the cool thing about study cards is you bring your deck with you wherever you go. And if you've got a few minutes, if you're waiting to pick something up from a drive-through, or if you're need to uh, go out, take your study cards with you. If you have a few minutes, run through 5 or 6 cards. Just see how well you know the concepts. So then again, I'm talking about these weekly review sessions. So even if you're doing this with someone in your household, or even if you're doing it on your own, once per week, you should promise to yourself, I'm going to go through everything we learned this week. So, you've got your 12 or 15 cards for week 1, go through them after week 1. For week 2, same thing. So now, because we're in week 3, you're going to have to do a little bit of, catch up work on this, but that's okay because you should be reviewing this week anyways. So why not make your deck of study cards now, and then you'll have them for the rest of the semester. They become a resource, right? Point number 4 here on this slide is we have to be organized, right? This makes sense in every aspect of life. The more organized you are, the more on top of things you are, the more successful you're going to be. So method number 4 is what we call spaced review. And this principle has been researched and proven to be true, that you're better off reviewing in a set pattern than randomly. So we like to promote the 3-3-6 method, which means, if you're going to take all of your week 1 materials, at the end of the week, 3 days later, review it. 3 days after that, review it. 6 days after that, review it again. So you can kind of space out your review. No cramming. Cramming is not a good strategy. And the reason for that is because the way the brain works, in order for your brain to create a new memory pathway, you have to touch that knowledge more than once. So when you cram, you might get that information into what is your short-term memory, but it's probably not going to be downloaded into your long-term memory because you haven't touched the knowledge enough times to create that memory pathway. So students often ask, how much should I review? The answer here is pretty simple: more is better. But even to be more accurate than that, more is better, but also spacing it out is a good idea, because then you're creating that regular touch on the knowledge that creates that memory pathway. So at a minimum of 3, as the review is showing, but obviously more and regular and strategic review are going to be a stronger method than not doing anything or cramming the night before. So yeah, we've already gone over this. The research has shown this kind of spacing of 3-3-6 is a really effective method for locking down that knowledge. So this is again what I've mentioned. To create that neurological pathway, you need to touch the knowledge at least 3 times. I actually prefer to say 3 times 3, so you should touch the knowledge 9 times. So reviewing becomes a habit. Okay, method number 5, which we call elaborate. And this is essentially retelling the learning points without your notes. So once you've created your study cards, done your spaced review, then the next process is, can you look at the idea? Like, for example, if I was to ask you, what is Bloom's taxonomy of intelligences? Could you, without referring to your notes, describe it? Tell me a little bit about Harold Bloom, the professor, and then tell me about the ladder of intelligences, or the pyramid of intelligences, or the levels of intelligence, however you want to mention it. But can you retell that story? Can you explain the concept? So in your review sessions, try retelling the knowledge without notes. And you can even do this with yourself. Once you've gotten really familiar with your study cards, then you just look at the question side. You don't even allow yourself to check the answer side before you do this elaboration process on your own. Okay, so explain in greater depth using metaphors and stories, right? So if you can create a story around it and then retell that story to yourself, you have a much better chance of learning the information and then retaining the information. So again, as I mentioned before, teaching is learning twice. This is actually a quote that one of my mentors, Bruce Cornwall, said to me in 2018. So I know I've also mentioned to a few times the idea of supporting borrowed information with a citation. So this is an example of an APA citation. Notice I've included 2 pieces of information here, and these are essential pieces: the last name of the original creator of that information, or we call that person the author, and then the date that the person said this or wrote this. Also, if you had it, like if you're quoting a book or an article or a document, you would include the page number afterwards. Those are the three key pieces of information that we need for an in-text citation. That's what this is called, an in-text citation. There's two types of in-text citations: integral and non-integral. This example we see here is a non-integral citation. That means it's in brackets at the end of the sentence, so it hasn't been integrated into the sentence. If it was an integral sentence, we'd actually have the name out here. It would say Cornwall stated, and then 2018 would be in brackets. Teaching is learning twice, and then at the end I'd put a page number if I pulled it out of a document. Okay, finally, here's an organizational tip or one slide talking about organization. So obviously being organized is crucial, and this is kind of the process of planning ahead. So again, the syllabus is going to be the guide for this. So I recommend that you look at your syllabus and then make a plan in advance, both for essays and for tests. And what this might look like is, today is Saturday, right? And I'm going to be posting this video early, and I hope that some of you see this video early. Then you should think to yourself, okay, my learning check is on Thursday. So I've got, 6 days in between. What's my study schedule going to be like? So maybe Sunday you decide I'm going to review week 1 and 2. Then on Monday, you're going to review week 2 and 3. Then on Wednesday, and so you go on and you make your actual scheduling, your actual plan. It's the way you should be doing this. So schedule review, and also you should be looking at an assignment schedule. So this is something that we will talk about more, but basically what I do is when I start a class, I will open up my student book with a calendar that has the monthly calendars in it. Then I will open up my syllabus, and I will actually put all of the syllabus, all of the major assignment dates from the syllabus into my student calendar. And then I also tell myself when I should start working on it, when I should have the first draft done, when I should be looking at doing editing in a second draft for each of these major assignments. And I literally do that. I create a little mini schedule for each of the major assignments. Okay, so talk to yourself about your days in the AM and the PM. This is a famous thing that Ben Franklin mentioned as one of his methods for success, is that he would, every night before going to bed, Benjamin Franklin would say to himself, tomorrow I want to do this and I want to do this. He would pick 2 things for himself that he wanted to do the next day. And in the morning when he woke up, he would review this with himself. Okay, here are my goals for today. I want to do this and I want to do this. And then later that night, he would check in. Did I do this and this? And so even by just setting 2 goals for yourself each day, you can kind of be a little bit more active and mindful in your learning process. Okay, so that is a very quick mini lecture on effective study techniques. And hopefully from this lecture, you will now go ahead and think about the fact that you should be starting your review cycle, making study cards on our concepts, and planning ahead with regards to this first learning check, but also moving forward with things like future paragraphs and future essays and future learning checks. You should now start your scheduling process for all of this.